that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everyone, it has been a hot minute since we have seen what the great two necromancers and their manservant Bauchelian and Korbal Broach and Emancipier Reese have been up to. Now, I decided to take a small break just because, 4, then 5, then 6, they're big meaty books, along with Night and Eyes was a little one that I did between there. That was the first Ian C. Esselmont book. Next time we discuss the Malazan Book of the Fallen, we will be discussing Return of the Crimson Guard by Ian C. Esselmont. So that will be up next. But here, I decided to take a small little fun break to discuss another little novella. This one is not a collection of short stories. There is the Crackpot Trail, which I believe is a collection. And so is the original one that we discussed already. And then after that, there is 2 little novellas that have been put out. However, I'm talking about this one now because this one actually takes place before the Crackpot Trail. Like I said, it doesn't really matter to the Malazan Book of the Fallen or even Ian C. Esselmont's works, but it's just something going on around this time. But it takes place before or after the second story in that first collection we discussed, and before the final one, Blood Follows. So this would actually, like, if you were doing this in chronological order, you would read the first 2 in that first collection, then this one, then the final one. And then Crackpot Trail is just a little bit later. You can kind of put that whenever. This story, and along with the other 3 that we discussed, should probably be read before any of Malazan, or at least of the original Book of the Fallen, because, at least in a reread, because I think it's good to have, like, these characters in your mind going into Book 3. But so far they haven't played any role whatsoever in these other books. I don't know if they're going to pop up in any of the last couple books or not. But anyway, I just got to take a little nice detour and, nice little bit of a shorter story, so talk about it here. This is The Worms of Blearsmouth, again by Steven Erickson, of course. This is directly after Lees of Laughter's End, which was the second story in the collection. Non-spoiler, I don't have too many spoilers either, but non-spoiler wise, what the fuck? What is Steven on? It's quite a fun, not erotic. There's a lot of sexual stuff in here, mostly used for comedy, but it's just like, all right, I guess. And it's a lot of fun, but I don't think that I would recommend this to someone who hasn't read the first collection or Crackpot Trail. Like, I feel like they kind of need to ease in, because, it's very much in the vein of these previous stories. Like, it feels very much like a Korbal and Bauchelian tale. But I wouldn't recommend this as a first outing, because it's just so weird. But it is actually really fun. If you remember, at the end of Lees of Laughter's End, they're on a boat, right? And they get attacked by these things, and it kind of messes up the boat. And the next time we see them in that final story in that collection, they're like in a carriage. So, like, how did that happen? How they get off the boat? How they make it to safety? I assume they just swam originally, but we get this whole story here as kind of to explain that. But they kind of shipwreck onto this little village, this little town, very small. There's this tyrannical ruler. What's his name? Did I write it down? I think I did. No, I didn't. It's like, you know what? I didn't write down the name, but it doesn't matter. I thought I did, but I didn't. All that matters is that we have this tyrant, and he likes to talk about his exploits and have his scribe write everything down about the utter brilliance that comes out of his mouth and how he's control of hundreds and millions of thousands. And he's like, and his scribes are like, well, maybe a couple hundred. He's like, don't contradict me, stuff like that. But he's like a sorcerer, much like Quick Ben or, Korbal and Bauchelian, and he makes these golems and he keeps the town in check through fear, But at the same time, you have this other stuff, like the story begins with this couple, and she's, like dry humping him. Again, not for children. You should not let your kids read these stories. And she's a virgin. But she does piss on him. Because we needed that. And there's a lot of stuff like that. There's also, middle of the way through, poor Reese is almost, luckily he escapes, but he's almost involved with a lady with 2 boobs. Big boobs. That she's named. But not only has she named her boobs, she made some sort of deal with an old witch back in the day. And her boobs don't have tits. They have like mouths and teeth and a tongue from other people. Only Malazan, folks, and only the Korbal and Bauchelian story where they would go that out there with their stories. Anyway, that's just like the gist. So basically, we get to see a bunch of the people of this town and the weird stuff that they're going on with. We got Bauchelian and Korbal, they want to get another passage out there. They don't have the ship anymore. They also want to meet up with this tyrant, this man, because it sounds like somebody that they can get along with. But that turns out not to be the case, and stuff ensues, and that's non-spoiler wise. As I said, it's not a very long story. It's very much like a short novella, short story, so I don't want to really spoil too much for you. I kind of spoil 2 big things, but like I'm just trying to stress to you how weird this is. But I had fun with it. It's just out there. I definitely, again, I still think the final story in the first collection was my favorite so far. I haven't read Crackpot Trail, but it was a lot of fun. And I mean, if you were liking those short stories before, if you had read those 3 stories and you liked it, I would just immediately read this after. I wouldn't wait to where I'm reviewing it now, just because it's meant to be back there, chronologically speaking. But, it was fun. So, I mean, if you like Bauchelian and Korbal, I don't imagine you wouldn't enjoy this. But I also would not recommend this to somebody who hasn't got into these stories yet. Even if you've only read Malazan, I would never suggest jumping in here to like the extended material, because it's just too out there. You need to kind of like ease into that with those 3 stories that I've reviewed already. But overall, if you are into it, you're going to be into it. It's silly, it's fun, it's dark, and yeah, I recommend it. I'm getting spoilers now. If you don't want that, time to hit the A. So what do we get here? We got, okay. So we have a character named Feed Little. This is the woman. And Spilgit. And they're having a little lap time together in the beginning of the story. Talking about how they need to escape from this town and go live a life of luxury together. And how he wants to love her forever. And she doesn't want to be beholden to one man. She wants to have many men. And he's like, you wouldn't be flattered to just have me and, for me to not sell your body for profit? And she's like, no, I wish you would. That's what I would love to do. That's the profession I want. So I guess they're making an OnlyFans soon. But yeah, it's really unhinged, this story. Like I just wrote so unhinged. It's a very unhinged story. I think I wrote that because at some point she pisses on his lap because she's excited. And yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? Yeah, so there's these golems that, of course, this sorcerer tyrant made. And Korbal, of course, our buddy, easily dispatches him like it's nothing. And he's like, ugh, I try to stop him, but he keeps breaking. So, it's fun. So they have to go meet the Lord or whatever, because he just killed something he spent like 5 months working on. And then kind of spoiled it in a non-spoiler. But yeah, breasts with female lips. Enough said. Luckily, Reese runs away from that. they're having this big dinner. The lord of this little fishing village town, or whatever the hell you want to call it, is chilling with Bauchelian and Korbal and Reese and feeding them dinner. And there's poison in the food. He tried to poison and kill them. Only for Bauchelian and Korbal would be like, yeah, but we're immune to pretty much every poison, so this was kind of not a problem. And then Reese is like, they poisoned my food? And then Botchin's like, it's fine. We've been poisoning your food for some time now. Don't worry, in little doses, so that you'd grow tolerance to such things. So, good to know that our boy, Emancipator Reese, is okay, because his employers have been, at least smidge, poisoning him every time he eats, just to give him some resilience to poison. If you think about it, it's actually a very loving act on their part. More so than I expected from them. So that was pretty nice. Very heartfelt, very heartwarming, you might say. And then we get to the end of the story, which is really the only thing of note I really had to mention, which is, and I knew something was going to happen. I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to play out. But Botchlin talks about how he used to love cooking and baking when he was little. It reminds him of his childhood. Now I'm interested in Botchlin's childhood and how he got to be the way he is. But he said when he was a child, he used to bake and stuff. He used to do all this stuff. So he's making cookies and frosting for this lord. And, Botchlin's eating it as to show that he's not immune to poison. And then the lord's like, did you poison it? Even if you did, I know that you are immune to poisons, so what does it matter? But then he takes a bite and he goes, I too am immune to most poisons. And then Botchlin's like, you're already dead. He's like, what could you possibly mean? And Botchlin returns by like, well, you see, I did a little spell. You see, did a little thing where as long as I was eating the cookies, nothing would happen. I don't know how he did this. He somehow put it to his like DNA or whatever. Science plus magic, I guess. And but the moment the frosting got a taste of anyone else's DNA, because Reese wanted to buy the cookie, and Butchlin said, "Don't you dare!" And so the Lord, this tyrant, gets ripped apart from the inside as a demon jumps out of his dead corpse, because Botchlin had put some pentagrams in the frosting. And then he says, "Go off, be free, demon." Okay, but it was a fun little ending. It's not like it's a Moriarty type character for Botchlin, as I would say they were like the evil inverse of, Sherlock and Moriarty in some sense. Even though Mr. Reese would be our straight man, whereas Korbal and Botchlin are unhinged. But it was cool to have somebody of a. I mean, I don't imagine in my head canon at least that he's anywhere near the power levels of Botchlin and Korbal. But still, he was a relatively, I mean, a bit kooky, a bit insane, but still like a well-respected sort of, or not respected is the wrong word. A decent, sorcerer of sorts. And the fact that he was, figured out what he thought they were doing and was able to avoid most poisons was like, oh, okay. So how is he gonna get out of this pickle? And just like a completely out there like sort of solution that I just thought was really funny. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. It was fun, and I mean, I didn't need an explanation as how they got the carriage for the final story of that first collection. But I mean, hey, I'll take it. And they keep that carriage, I think, because there's that same carriage when they meet all the characters in Memories of Ice. So that's just like we didn't need that. We didn't need this whole story to get that, but sure, I guess. I mean, I'll take it. I like continuity. So I mean, that's a nice little fit there if you need it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. These are nice little breathers. They're short, they're sweet, they're funny, they're quick paced. And they're always just silly, and sometimes even have more of a point. Like the last story in Bloodfellows, I think, was a very poignant thing. Despite being a comedy. I didn't really feel that as much. Maybe it went over my head. I didn't feel like, I mean, there was some talk of like classism, I guess, and or like capitalism a little bit. I'm kind of stretching that, but it was mostly just like a funny little fun tale. So But if you need a little breather, if you're like, I've been reading Malazan, it's like 1,000 pages each, and it's like, oh my goodness, not that you're not enjoying it, but just like that's a lot for the brain to keep, in track of. If you want a nice little breather, it's a nice little story to read. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Sharing, my goodness, helps all the time. And I'll see you next time, where we discuss Return of the Crimson Guard by Esselmont. And until then, be friendly to Bauchelian and Korbal, because while you still might die, you got a better chance of surviving than if you don't. And always prove useful. And don't try to kill your masters, because, Bauchelian and Korbal have killed every manservant they've ever had, except for Reese. He's the longest living manservant. Why is that? Well, Reese doesn't try to kill them every 2 seconds. So, that is something. So, at least they repay the loyalty. So, that's pretty much it, guys. Till next time, I'll see you around.